sheet.
I can't.
It said it was like on the camping scale.
I moved to Evans. I got the job August 2010. I moved in April 2011.
Shaking my heart.
Wow, 10 years ago.
Yes.
I want to try the table.
Yep. And it just keeps going up. And if you look at us on apartments.com, still compared to others, we're still kind of on the lower, but they all have more amenities or they're newer or whatnot. And I'm like, we shouldn't be hitting those prices. So just so you know, because when they build the new ones, that's the prices.
Mm.
Once
The
they
next
go
one
and get
kills
rid
it.
of all the
1,400 for his 1 bedroom, 16 for 2, and 18 for 3.
And the ones they built down at Sandstone Vistas behind Walmart and Longmont, their 3 bedrooms are over $2,000. I don't know if we can afford that.
Hey, Alan, you came in there.
Well, yeah, and I'm just like, good night. That's
I did not. It's everyone's driving really slow, and there is a lot of ice. Hopefully it's okay.
Yeah, I live a few blocks away. I haven't seen any car.
Your basement.
You need to tell them to look on apartments.com as the best website, and they can go ahead and put all their information in and put when they want to move, what size they're looking for, everything, and then they can be added to wait lists for all these properties, and they'll reach out to them. That's what we use.
All right, let's go ahead and get started with the City of Evans work session. First item on the agenda is the 2022 Strategic City Work Plan. Turn it to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of the council. First of all, as relates to this item, thank you for your participation in the master plan, both for the city's comprehensive plan and transportation plan on Saturday. I think that was a very helpful session, especially as we all think about what we do with it at this time of year. This is when staff brings the recommended work plan for the year to you. It's currently been based on the visioning and work that you did in 2018 to lay out the vision for the city, and also what we call key performance areas that are really those things, those initiatives that we need to be doing to advance your vision. And then staff takes those and we align our work with those key performance areas, which are what you see in the detail in this plan tonight. So after Saturday's session, I went through this list, and just flagged those deliverables, we call them, that are furthering the master plans. And I think that's what I'll actually highlight tonight. We never go through line by line unless council would like that, but we usually review some of those that are, I think, most resonant with council, most resonant with the community, and those that people will certainly see the most. And tonight, there's a good list of them, but I would like to kind of highlight those that I think are both fitting within your key performance areas for us, and also the master plans that you looked at in draft on Saturday. First is our area for well-maintained infrastructure with the capacity to grow. The highlight projects in this area for 2022 are certainly the 47th Avenue widening, which is pretty much complete. We have all but the medians really, and some of the finished work there to complete once it warms up. The biggest projects for the year will be widening 23rd Avenue to a 4-lane arterial, completing construction of 37th Street from 47th Avenue back east to Sienna Avenue, which includes the roundabout at the intersection. Another one to highlight would be completing the design of the Evans Ditch Trail pursuant to the alignment envisioned in the master plans that we're looking at. That's been a project that's been on our hope list for some time. Another big one, I think very important for advancing conditions on the east side of our community, completing the Idaho Street construction and utility upgrade.
Can you push your mic just a little farther away where
You getting a lot? Do that. Next one to highlight would be the implementation of a routine maintenance program of Highway 85 right-of-way to include regular debris and trash removal, mowing, and sweeping, something in the past that we've done when we have capacity. We're actually building that into the work plan as a higher priority for this year. That's something that I know council has been interested in and directed us to the middle of last year. Those are the highlights of our largest capital projects. Also under this larger key performance area is completing all the municipal code updates to make sure that they're consistent with the 2022 master plans that we had talked about on Saturday. Completing the feasibility analysis for expanding water and sewer services to areas in Evans south of the river. Establishing, I'm skipping down a few, the vision for a right-sized sewer main for existing and future 49th Street corridor development. Developing a dashboard and tracking tool that works for council, for staff, and also for the public in tracking the progress on implementing the master plan and transportation master plan. And the last one to highlight would be updating the municipal code to ensure readiness for broadband as an emerging utility demand. Another few of these infrastructure related projects. This is the year we're set to negotiate an updated water treatment agreement with the city of Greeley. It doesn't come due until middle of 2023, but we've communicated with them about our interest, and they've indicated that they're willing to sit down and get into the guts of that and come up with the next treatment agreement for Greeley. We'll come back to council with several sessions about planning to engage fully with Greeley on that goal. And then finally, within this area, although probably one of the most important for long term, is advancing the wastewater treatment plant expansion planning based on anticipated growth. The actions that we're anticipating for this year would be completing the updated wastewater utility plan, which is fundamental to the wastewater treatment plant, and procuring an owner's representative like we used last time, someone who can really work for us in moving the project along, and then also starting design services for that expansion. So those are just a few of those capital projects. As I always say, that's the tip of the iceberg. We probably have another 20 or so projects that are happening that are probably less visible to the community. Council will probably recognize them, and we'll definitely report on them, but these are those that we feel are most significant as we move into the year. Next key performance area is our safe and desirable neighborhoods with engaged residents. These couple to highlight here would be working with property owners in the industrial zone to gain compliance with land use and nuisance abatement regulations through voluntary compliance, and also with enforcement. We'll have a work session for you coming up within a couple of meetings on that whole initiative. And also within this area, advancing plans for the new police station. In 2022, our plans would be to finalize the facility site acquisition, hire an owner's representative, develop the financing plan, and also make substantive progress on the design of that facility. Jumping down to the key performance area, we also want to foster family-friendly and attractive amenities. Under that one, we have completing the design and construction of the Tract O trail amenities. We also have completing design. The Tract O will actually have construction and design. For Arrowhead Open Space, we hope to finalize the design for that one so we can go ahead and build that trail out and finish that property in 2023 after the intersection of 47th and 37th is complete, so we can finish that off. Also under that key performance area is our goal to complete $1 million of playground replacement projects. The work plan outlines the four projects that are highest priority. Those are the ones that council gave some green light on during the work session last year. Moving on to resilient local economy, we have, there is the grant-funded residential fixture replacement program. Excuse me. We also are, based on the master plan, we're going to go ahead. We have a grant for a pretty in-depth economic development strategic plan, which I think will help us to get more targeted, more focused in those areas. And then probably one of the most visible goals there is we're hoping to complete the development agreement for the southwest corner of Highway 85 and 31st Street. Under fiscally responsible government, we have probably very significant for us is updating the impact fees to ensure that the basis for our fees are consistent with current infrastructure policy goals. So now that we have those master plan chapters done, we can go back to the impact fees and make sure that they're set correctly to achieve those goals. Under responsive city services, we have the redesign of the city website that council heard about a few weeks ago to ensure easier navigation to more information and services. As council will note, there are many more issues there, and also those that I skipped around in the plan. I tried to hit on those that I think, again, are most visible and most high on council's radar. But we'd be happy to answer any more questions. I have asked Randy to join me at the staff table, as I think so many of these key projects are within areas that he helps support as well. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions, and we look forward to moving things forward in 2022.
Thanks, Jim. Who has a question for staff or comments about these items?
I think it's as discussed. So if you get it done, get it done.
Likewise, I think I'm excited for this year, and hopefully we achieve all these specific projects, and that'll be great for the community. So I'm excited for this year.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Looks good. Good job.
Thank you.
Next item is the 2022 Pavement Management Plan.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Randy's gonna stay probably, and Mark's gonna join us at the staff table. Hopefully we can get the sound level correct. This is another, I think exciting deliverable that's not probably as exciting as, might not be the word, but very important to the community. I say that next to the city engineer. It's enthralling. No, it is very important for us. And this, you'll recall, we've been able to at least triple the amount of maintenance that we're doing on our streets each year, thanks to the road tax. And with that, this is when we come to you early in the year with our concept for what the program can look at for this year look like. And if you have comments, suggestions that we haven't incorporated, we'd like to hear those. And then with your direction tonight, we'll bring back the individual contracts starting pretty soon with the chip. No, not chip seal. Is it chip seal?
That'll be the first one.
Chip seal.
Chip seal.
Chip seal.
Crack seal.
So we do the crack seal coming too.
They did.
Okay, it's done. Then we are on our way. So with that, I'll ask our city engineer, Mark Oberschmidt, to give an overview of the program, and then we'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on if we're on the right track.
Thank you, Jim. Good evening, members of council. As Jim said, we're working with a little bit less money this year than we did in the past, so we're going to try to stretch it a little bit further. One of the bigger projects will be to work on 35th Avenue and get that mill and overlaid as far as we can go with the money that we've got allotted as we've broken it down at this point. And that we've got two projects that are lined up for mill and overlay, that being the first one and the priority, and then Tuscany Street. And we're looking at doing that because just about all of Tuscany has been chip sealed to date, and this last remaining piece to get it out to 47th Avenue would just be a mill and overlay. and it would blend it together with the recent completion of the extra lane widening out at 47th Avenue, so we'd have essentially a brand new surface for that entire length of Tuscany Street. So if the money's allowed, we'll do that one as well. And we're looking at, we have $600,000 set aside for a mill and overlay. We have to go out and do the final dimensions on 35th Avenue. We'll do as much of that as we can with the $600,000 and whatever's left over. Then we would work on Tuscany Street after that. And then other parts of where we're going to continue to do some more chip sealing around, where Leon has done a lot over the last couple of years. And we're happy with the results that we've gotten to date. The roads are much better than they have been. We still have a lot of work to do, but we're making good progress. Curb and gutter, we're going to be working on some projects to replace curb and gutter in the local neighborhoods, as well as solve some minor drainage problems along 23rd Avenue. That requires a little bit of extra effort on the front end, because we're actually going to redesign a couple of driveways along 23rd Avenue to keep the water in 23rd Avenue rather than flowing on to the properties. Down the road, when we get to the 23rd Avenue as a whole, we'll be doing a little bit more of that in terms of creating a little bit of a bump as you go into the properties to keep the water in the streets and getting into the storm sewer rather than flowing across properties. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I might just elaborate a little bit on some of the philosophy here. You'll see the 35th Avenue chips mill and overlay. That's a major project, and we're starting to shift. We've done so much work in the neighborhoods over the last few years. We still have some more to go, but we also think that we need to be making some progress on the arterials. So I know the engineers looked at the condition of 35th Avenue, 23rd Avenue. Now 47th Avenue is pretty much new. So we're trying to shift some of this maintenance funding away from the extent of neighborhoods to the arterials. So, if we can get 35th Avenue done this year, that'd be great. And then over the next couple of years, we'll be wanting to get probably 23rd.
23rd would be next.
23rd Avenue would be the next one, so that we're really rounding out the community between so that we have new surfaces on the existing arterials as we widen and grow out the other arterials like 37 and 40 and 23rd. I think so. That's probably the big shift that you're seeing. And just to explain the documents that you have in the packet, you have summaries. We know some people like maps and some people like lists. So we have a list on page 15 of the treatments on various streets that we're recommending to do. That's on 15 and 16. And then we have on page 17 a reminder of what we did last year, because we think it's good to remember how this all fits together. And then we have the maps with the various surface treatments for 22. That concludes our remarks, Mayor.
Thanks, Jim. Questions of staff or comments on this item? Fred?
Since Mark wasn't present, I think I want to comment that I had several people comment about the alleyways, and one gentleman was more than wildly enthusiastic about what you've done with it to improve the alleys.
Oh, yeah, we've established kind of a small budget for the alleys on an annual basis that Scott and his team will get through there with the blade and smooth them out as best as possible. And over time, we'll get them to be either concrete or asphalt.
Yeah, the one gentleman was wildly enthusiastic about what had been done with it, and a couple other people have commented to me over the last year or so.
Well, let's Scott.
It's all been positive.
Thank you.
Who else?
I'm excited about all that we're doing, but especially the arterials 35th and 23rd. But 23rd is it's a high traveled, street, and there's a lot of businesses there, and it's quite congested with businesses, and the driveways and all that area has taken a toll over time. So the simple fact that we're going to focus on that, at least within the next couple years, is great, especially for all those business owners. And not only that, it also elevates the area. And we have, potential places for businesses that can definitely capture people's eyes on both 35th and 23rd. So I'm excited about that in the upcoming years. So great job on that.
Tammy, anything to add?
Thank you for putting it on there, 35th. I know that's been something I've talked about a lot. So I really, really appreciate seeing this on there. Thank you all.
Laura? Mark? No, it looks great. A lot of good work coming ahead. I do have one off subject, but on this subject question. I had asked you about the turn lane on 23rd. You got a turn lane going right if you're heading south.
striping.
That middle, yeah.
Yes.
Where are we at there?
We haven't been able to get that done. With the construction of 23rd Avenue South Side, we will get all that striping updated. We didn't have any money left in the striping budget from last year to do anything that we could roll into it for this year. So with the 23rd Avenue construction, which should begin in May, all that striping will be updated.
But I guess maybe I'll reword it. I'm not asking for the whole thing to get restriped, just the one part to make that a straight through lane. Like to me, you could take some black paint and just go like this. It would make a straight lane.
I can talk. I forgot about that. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Scott, I can ask Scott. I know they have some striping equipment and some paint, but they don't have the really good stuff, so it wouldn't last very long.
I've actually seen cars start doing it now, which is the way I think it was intended to do. The council doesn't know. If you're heading south onto the new street we just built, you have a right only lane, and then you have a left turn lane, and then the middle there is a lane, but it's like kind of closed, which is intended to be a straight lane. And I have seen cars start going straight now through that. Otherwise, if you're wanting to go right, but two cars in front of you is waiting to go straight, you're waiting until that light changes instead of cars flowing like they should.
They did stripe it to put on there, well not stripe it, they did mark it that you could go straight or turn, but the straight arrow faded off.
Okay,
Because
yeah,
I'm
right
sure
now it's just a right arrow.
Mark was out there
we-
just chalking it in.
It sounds like we could do the temporary very soon and then do it permanently
That's what I'm wondering.
with the big project.
As it becomes a 4-lane, it will be just like 35th Avenue. So you have 2 through lanes, and the outside one will be right turn. The middle lane will be through, and then the inside lane will be left turn.
And that's kind of what it is now, other than it's just kind of closed down.
Well, and there aren't like 2 lanes for you to continue going south, just 1 lane.
To go south.
The difficulty is you only have one lane to get south on South Side.
Sure.
Going from a 4-lane to a 2-lane.
Cool. Thanks for looking
With
into
that
that.
corrected.
Anyone else?
Just one note as you talk to constituents, that map on page 18 of your packet, you may find it useful just to keep that handy or whatever. That's a shorthand version of all the work that's been done since 2019. It's 2019, 2020, 2021. All those streets that are in green, and then the pink and gold are the streets being done this year. So if there are questions come up about, why hasn't my street been taken care of or whatever, that's a good snapshot of the streets that have been taken care of over the last 4 years.
Any questions on that?
Oh, thank you for pointing that out. 'Cause
Do you share that? Like on
Good.
all
I do
of
have
our
one
media?
thing. I think Mark just mentioned, and maybe I wasn't catching the whole thing, that you were gonna do some mitigation on flooding on 23rd for the businesses.
Yes, at
That's
23rd and 34th, the Palomino
The
restaurant.
Palomino it always gets flooded.
Yes.
It's really bad.
That
So
area.
I'm very happy to hear that because
There's-
it's,
Complex issues there. I mean, it's not just
Yeah, we're gonna rebuild both those driveways.
that will keep some of the water from coming off the street. They still have some issues with sizing of their stormwater at that southeast corner, correct? That
Yeah.
it's not
Southeast
going to
corner
be.
looks like if we had
Yeah.
something on our sidewalk that would allow for the drainage, it wouldn't pool up. It seemed like it's just higher than what their lot is. And if they could have it so that it drained into, the storm drain instead of pooling.
We're gonna take some of the water off, but the other issue that we have to work out with the property owners is we need to stabilize the soil so it's not eroding and all that dirt is just running into the Palomino's east parking lot. That's what's happening now, and that's something that we have to get the owners to cooperate on.
Yeah. I mean, running off of a parking lot is something different than running off of the landscaping and throwing the silt into into our stormwater.
Yeah.
But anyways, so that's great that we're gonna look at that because it's kind of been a long-standing issue.
23rd, yes.
Anyone else? All right, thanks, Mark. Next item is attorney.
Mayor, as always, I will turn it over directly
To the city attorney.
I want this map. Jen, can we get this map printed?
Printed.
Yeah, if you don't mind. It's the
Sure,
one
it just
with
shows all the work.
all the
I don't
work.
see which one you've got.
Yeah, so what that Randy was talking about with all the green.
That's the wrong one. Hold on. What happened to all these?
Chip, all right, we're staying up and putting this together.
Shoot, these are all out of order.
Thank you.
There it is. Okay. These are all out of order.
Sorry. So I said, have you sure? We know there's still work to do.
Swapped out so many times.
But it's nice to have that visual because
Yeah.
So, this is kind of a warm-up for a discussion we're gonna have later tonight. I just call it annexation 101. You guys have been through annexation, you have a general idea about them. But there are a couple of issues that I think it's important that we talk a little bit more about than we have in the past. And so, the first thing I want to do was figure out quicker. Beyond that, I want to just briefly go through and summarize the process for what we call 100% landowner annexations. We're not talking about where some people want to come in an area and other people in that area don't. This is where the property is owned usually by one person or just two people, and they all want to come into the city. And the process we've been through before. First is the filing of petitions, the annexation petition with city clerk, signed by 100% of the landowners. It includes assertions that criteria that we refer to as the 104 and 105 criteria have to be satisfied. We'll come back to those. It has to be accompanied by an annexation map. As soon as it comes in, then at your next meeting, that petition gets referred to you. And the purpose of that referral is to set what's called an eligibility hearing. That has to happen within 30 to 60 days. I thought it was just us here, so I didn't really worry about the mics too much. So then, 30 to 60 days later, you have your eligibility hearing, and that's where these are the 104 and 105 criteria. You have to show that there's 1/6 contiguity between the city and the property that's to be annexed. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that 1/6 contiguity requirement tonight. You also have to show that the land is urban or it's going to be urbanized in the near future, that it's integrated or capable of being integrated into the city. And then if you have worked out some kind of an annexation agreement with the landowner, that's where that comes in. You have to indicate what those additional terms and conditions are that are going to be imposed on the annexation. And then the 105 criteria, 3112 105 criteria are sort of the things that you're not doing. You want to make sure that you're not splitting property up that's under common ownership, that you're not detaching it part of the property from the school district that was otherwise in, that you're not extending your municipal boundaries by more than 3 miles through this annexation, and that you're not splitting the street or an alley. And then the outcomes of that eligibility hearing are you adopt a resolution that says, okay, we find this property is eligible to be annexed. That doesn't mean that you have to annex it, it's just eligible. It's met all the criteria. Then either then or later you can go ahead and approve the annexation ordinance. That's the document that actually says, okay, we've decided we want this property to come into town or city, and so we're annexing it. You can, but at that same time, you're not required to zone the property. You have to zone it within 90 days when you annex it. And then you can, though again, you're not required to approve an annexation and development agreement. You usually end up doing the zoning and the annexation agreement at that same time because from the developer's perspective, really doesn't want to come into the city until he knows what the deal is. And the deal for him to come in is usually set forth in the zoning that he wants for the property or that you've agreed to provide him, and in the annexation agreement. And then after you annex the property, then it's up to staff to do sort of some administrative things to do to perfect that ordinance. They have to file the map with DOLA, they have to record working recorder, some of those kinds of things. Okay, so that's what I'm not talking to you about today. That's just sort of the review. This is the stuff we really want to talk about. there are a couple of concepts. One of them is contiguity and serial annexations. The other is flagpole annexations. I want to spend a little bit of time on those tonight because I think there's some misconceptions among a lot of people about contiguity requirement. For one thing, contiguity is not affected by all of these things. It's not affected by streets, alleys, rights-of-ways, public lands, or even natural bodies of water. The town of Grand Lake at one point contemplated an annexation that there was a North Shore and a South Shore, and the town's on the North Shore, and lots of rich homes are on the South Shore. And they contemplated an annexation of ignored the lake and went right across to annex on the South Shore. And that's the way annexations are supposed to work. So in determining contiguity, you ignore those things, but also you need to keep in mind that other people can ignore those things too. So for example, if the city owns a roadway and there's county property on one side and property belonging or within another municipality on the other, just because the city of Evans owns that roadway doesn't stop that other municipality from going across the road to establish contiguity. So it doesn't really matter whose street it is, as long as for purposes of determining contiguity, you just act like those things aren't there. And then the last thing is 1/6 does not mean 1/6. Yeah.
Of course not.
So blue is always the city of Evans, the A up there. B for these slides is always the area that we're looking at for possible annexation. So if there was just that part that was touching, I guess I could use the, yeah, this is the only part that's really contiguous here. Then, if you multiply that by 6, that's not going to be a very big area that you could annex. So the first time, all you can do is annex a little area like this, annexation 1. But then once you annex that piece of property, then you have all of this area here and here to create contiguity with the rest of it. So if you multiply that times 6, then you've got a bigger area out here that you can annex, and that would be serial annexation number 2. And then when you finish serial annexation number 2, then you've got all this area here and all this area up here. Multiply that by 6, then you can go way out here and annex all of that area. Well, the statute specifically contemplates you doing serial annexations. And it says not only can you do serial annexations, but you can do them all simultaneously. When we annexed the Granby Ranch property to Granby, we did a series of 8 annexations simultaneously. So it really doesn't matter how much contiguity it is. If you just have a little piece that touches, you can do as many serial annexations as you need to annex as much as you and the landowner agree to. Flagpole annexations. Again, the blue stuff's the city. The red line there is a roadway typically, and the green area over to the right is the area that the city wants to annex. And typically the roadway is a county road, and if you're going to use the flagpole, the county would have to convey it to the city, so it becomes a city roadway. And it's not that unusual for counties to do that. I mean, that stretch of roadway may just be go through a part of the city anyway. It may not be a real important to the county, and it's usually a maintenance burden for the county. So it's not unusual for counties to say, yeah, city, if you want the road, it's yours. If you have this situation, then the city can go down the flagpole and annex the parcel that's way out there. So the pole is typically a roadway. What it means for the flag is that if you're out here on the roadway, and there we are, and this part right here is now city property because the roadway is the city's, or it's within the city anyway. It's been annexed to the city. Clearly, you have the 1/6 contiguity that you need to annex that entire triangle. But even if you just had a little bit of roadway, even if the roadway just went out to here, then you could do a series of annexations and bring in that parcel through that series of annexations. The key is that, and for a long time this requirement wasn't in there, but about 15 years ago, they changed the story for what it means for lands along the pole. So if you own property anywhere along the pole, whether it's on north of it or south of it here, you have a right to annex to the city on the same terms and conditions that were offered to the people that own the flag. So when you do a flagpole annexation, you just want to make sure that whatever you offer to the people that are at the flag, you're willing to offer and accept from any property that's along the pole. The nature of annexation is horse trading. So if I have a horse and you want to buy it, but I don't want to sell it, there's not going to be a deal. And on the other hand, if you want my horse, but I don't want to sell it, there's not going to be a deal. There's never a deal in horse trading until both parties, want a buyer and a seller, and you really have worked out the terms. Well, a lot of people are under the misconception that if it's next to the city and it's in the city's planning area or its comp plan or whatever it is, then the city can just force these people into annex, and they can't. And likewise, some landowners feel like, well, if I've been right next to the city forever, then the city really should and almost must take me into the city and annex me if I want to be annexed. Not true. It's unlike any other of your land use decisions. If somebody comes in front of you with a subdivision application and they've met all the criteria for a subdivision, you have to approve it. You can't say no. But if somebody comes to you with an annexation and says, I really want to annex to the city, you're under no obligation to annex. It's a completely voluntary process both ways. And in fact, if a landowner is contiguous to more than one city, the landowner can choose to annex to either city or not to annex at all. So, in essence, both parties in an annexation negotiation are writing on a clean slate. And because of that, there are really a couple of keys to successful annexation efforts. One is the development of a relationship, and it could either be the property owner, or if there's a developer that's interested in purchasing that process or that property and coming into the city, then it could be that developer. But you really need to have, the city needs to work on developing relationships with property owners and developers, because those are the people that, again, this is 100% annexation. You can't require them to come in. The only time you can require somebody to annex to the city is if it's an enclave. The city completely surrounds them, and you've surrounded them for 3 years, then you can force them in. That doesn't happen very often.
That's my question to
Yeah.
you, because we never asked to be annexed into the city. And all of a sudden then, not all of a sudden, obviously, but later on, we saw that we were annexed into the city.
Okay.
So that was going to be my question, was we never asked, and so how did that happen, but you just answered it.
You were surrounded.
Well, we got city on one side and city park on the other side now,
Mhm.
so now we are totally surrounded.
So that's an enclave. You have to be 100% surrounded for 3 years or longer. That's the only time you can do it. But other than that, you have to develop this relationship with the landowner. And it doesn't make you popular to force people in. You don't have to annex enclaves. And a lot of times they don't want to be in, and you don't want to force them in.
So then my question, if we wanted to annex some of the enclaves that we have, and it's been like that for quite some time, so then we could just come to the county and say, hey, we're annexing them?
So you had an area that was surrounded by the city,
Let's say over here, the railroad trail.
and part of it was annexed to the city, but part of it still has not been?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, you can essentially force them in at any time. Yeah, there was a discussion for a while about whether you had to annex the entire enclave or if you could just pick part of it. And the general consensus among municipal attorneys is that you can just pick part of it. It's the donut hole. You can just pick part of the donut hole that you want, but you're not required to take the whole thing. And an enclave property owner can't force you to take them. So that's the one time that the city really is from the driver's seat and can say, we're gonna force that annexation. The other important thing to do as far as successful annexation efforts is to think about some incentives that you can provide to the landowners, because typically the lands that you're trying to annex when you're working around the perimeter of the city are agricultural lands. A lot of times they're people that have farmed those lands for a long time. A lot of times they're not, they haven't come to the city to annex because they don't want to be in the city. And so you need to provide some incentive for them to come. It's got to be to their benefit. And A lot of times it's because they decided maybe they're going to get out of the farming business and they see development coming so they can enhance the value of their property before they sell it to a developer. There are lots of reasons that can change. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you just have to wait a long time. And the next page in your materials, although not here, because I think we should talk about them more in executive session, are what some of those incentives are. What can you offer to people that makes them say, yeah, I want to come into the city? And I think that's something that we're going to discuss in executive session. But that's really the main things I wanted to briefly go through tonight. Are there questions?
There's a question for Scott.
Question is, how do you stay warm tonight?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. If you have questions later, feel free to give me a call.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
No, I just wanted to say, I think that having Scott give us these little, informational sessions is very, very helpful. And not only when something comes up that's gonna be on the agenda, but if we ever have time to fill, some of these work sessions, I'd rather come in, a half an hour earlier and learn a little bit, about things that we could, put in our little bag of knowledge for the city and to better represent our citizens and answer questions. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. And along those lines, if any of you have a particular topic you have questions about, you want to turn your chat on.
Usually it's me and Scott deciding what we're going to talk about.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Council discussion, anyone have anything? All right, go ahead, Jim.
At the council's discretion, of course, I'd like to request, or I think as an option, we could address one of the executive sessions in open session without reference to any confidential material. It's the one that's currently entitled personnel.
Yeah.
I think we could probably get that completed so the council would have fewer executive sessions tonight.
Okay.
Sure.
All honesty, I'm going to take a 5-minute break because I got to go turn off the online ordering in my restaurants right now
Okay.
because of snow. So.
Okay.
I think we could try that. We could do it, and just I'm thinking of your time tonight. It should be pretty short.
Cool. Just add it to the normal agenda.
Well, no, we could handle it
Right now?
now. If you need 5 minutes, then we'd have 10 minutes left. Is that?
We'll see how fast I can do it.
Thanks.
Awesome.
It's what?
Nobody. It's not bad news. Is the upshot.
It's what?
It's
Most
not
of
bad.
the time, when you see that topic of personnel, it's something bad, and this is.
Right, okay. That's why I was like, all
It's
right,
clarification.
Jim turned in his
No.
papers. Dirty rotten liar.
Oh my God. Tell me how you really feel.
Good, yeah.
Oh,
Don't put that on me.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't fall apart. Yeah, Mark comes in and all goes out.
Can we get the
So,
part of the charter on that specific topic sent to us?
which topic?
I don't know. It's the one that I'm thinking you're going to speak of.
It's a kind of more of a budget question.
Oh, okay, then. Totally different.
Scott, where's annexations recorded at then?
Where's it recorded?
Yes.
So the annexation map, could you pull out, I guess, down the lower?
Yeah.
That's in one county. You have to keep one here.
So, because my question was, and I bring my place up because I just know about it. The county never recorded us as being annexed into the city. And the city counts us as being annexed into the city.
Yes, there are questions.
The very end of the annexation statute, because there were, I guess I'll put it gently, a lot of
Can't find the app. The picture.
a lot of annexations didn't
New
get quite
personnel thing too.
right.
Yes, I've already had someone call out for tomorrow.
So they
Already?
put a-
Yeah.
You're not going to give them a snow day? How dare you?
Why would I?
Oh my
There's very few
No, I let them all choose. I don't tell them you have to
Go
be
work
here,
from
you don't
home.
have to be here. Well, their maintenance, how do they work?
Oh,
So,
I am
That's a snow
mentally
day.
changing your window blinds right now.
I think they can wait a day.
You know, you would think, but the way people are today, nope.
It's like
We
now.
are horrible people. We're also horrible because we don't plow between the cars. And I'm like, what do you want us to do? You know, you go tell everybody in your building to get their car off the property, and then we'll go plow. And this one lady today told me, oh, my roommate said they do that in Massachusetts. And I'm like, we're not in Massachusetts.
I'm just trying to
so
figure out how
sorry.
now to get
But unless everybody
giving the
moves,
school
we
district
can't
their
get between the
taxes.
cars. And when they clean the snow off, where do they put it?
Good luck with that.
Between the cars.
Those grease buggers.
Are you a school district? You're fine.
I'm like, do you go to Walmart and complain about this?
Yeah.
Go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Just
For like, it was like $1,800 for my
Yeah,
place,
that's what I'm
school,
saying.
and the fire district
I'm
was
just
like
like, oh,
500,
Lord Almighty.
which also got me upset
My
because
assistant
our
manager
police
said
is
the
only
same
like
thing.
200.
We have them also.
So,
Sometimes, you know, and I get it, they're like, well, can I pay for that, you know, down the road? And Chris and I
Yeah,
really
well,
were like, do you pay for your groceries?
yeah, but I call the police department way more than I call the fire
You
department.
know, you pay for your,
They have a lot.
I'll pay for hamburger
Yes,
on a
yeah.
Tuesday, you know, whatever. If you buy me one now,
And they have a little bit riskier job too.
get it.
I mean, once in a while, we've got the
Smile.
big fire that, you know, but for the most part,
Trying to give us, I understand they know there a lot, but sometimes
getting a little riskier and riskier.
Until you're putting out a fire and where was that when you get shot?
And they're sitting there and they're like,
Yeah.
we know you don't want to hear ourselves.
Yeah, you just have to worry about falling through the roof, not just going out and getting
Yeah.
shot at. Poor guys. All right, thank you. You got a million questions for you. Looks like Drew wants to answer questions.
It's in your mailbox.
Oh, okay, I'll go grab it.
I had to ask her to send that too.
Maybe.
Right.
Actually, the flood made me, so that was a question for these guys a little bit too.
We can't go between your
But yeah, that's funny. Anti-carpet
And then they
bender.
have to get their snow.
Which one?
But they can't do that. You can't
It was riveting.
drive with snow.
So exciting. It was fun.
Well, that's the same. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, council. So this is a session, we were going to have an executive session because I was going to let council know that there is an individual with whom the council is familiar who may be able to help us with this need. I think we can have this session. It might even be better if we have the session without that, and then I'm happy to fill you in, you know, probably outside of this session. So with that, we talked about the work plan a few minutes ago. Lots of good work and projects. This is not, there we go. The council funded a new management analyst position in the budget. And, you know, now that Randy and I are actually putting all of those projects into place, getting things going, and we've advertised for that position. We're realizing that that position is going to help us, but there's still a whole lot of work and projects that we've been putting under this management analyst banner that we've had that we knew we wanted to get funded and would help us to move things forward. These are just some examples of what that position will help us to get done, ranging from really water treatment at IGA, you know, the new police station, the wastewater treatment plant expansion, even though we plan to have project managers or owners' representatives working for us, professional construction people, we're still going to need, as we start to put details into place, we're still going to need someone on staff to manage those individuals and make sure that things are moving along. Right now, that role, really for all of these things, would likely be, you know, myself or Randy or Rick for the police station or Jackie, all of those folks with, you know, have a lot else going on and might, not be the best to manage those. So we put them all under this management analyst heading. We've got a facilities asset management plan. This $1 million of playground replacement, which right now will be, accomplished by Scott and Efren, who will be getting that done on all of the other summertime work that they have to do. Making sure that we get those couple those open space trails projects that aren't really road, hard capital projects, but getting those trails projects completed. Things like following up on our hunting policy that we had last summer. We're right now, very soon, within a couple meetings, bringing council some recommendations on shifting around some of our workspace as we plan for the new police station, and we have some new positions joining us. We've had to find creative ways of using the space that we have, and we want to bring that to you. But we know that even that's going to take, cubicles acquisition and move planning and a lot of detail work that will fall under this new position. Plus things like, assisting Jackie with the impact fee studies and things. We've got oil and gas revenue analysis for some work that you'll be seeing within a couple months. So within about 10 minutes, Randy and I came up with this list of all the things that we're going to be looking at from this person. What I want to ask you about tonight is whether you would agree with our recommendation to add one more FTE to help us make sure that we can follow through on this work plan, get all of those projects done, and we think probably a little more, cost effectively for those big projects if we're able to really make sure someone's assigned to them. With this proposal, we would add a special projects manager. And if you reallocate those projects from the last slide that showed them all under the one position to these couple categories, or these under these different FTEs or staff positions, we think that this is much more manageable. And we can see as we look at those projects that they shake out with more typical analytical projects that you see on the right side under the management analyst, with some of that more project management work that has kind of some capital and community aspects to it on the left. And so we think that this makes sense and would really help us to feel more confident that we can get all this work done without letting things fall through the cracks, without Randy, Jackie, myself, Julie, stretched beyond what we'd be doing in order to make sure that we can get all these things done. So that's the request. Whenever I think of this need, next thing I think is, can we afford it and how? I have a couple slides on that. I asked Jackie, she's not a totally fair question in January, but how are we doing on closing out 2021? Just looking at revenues and how we're closing with expenditures. She did a preliminary look at how we're doing. And I'll summarize, and then she's here to help with any questions here. This just shows that the 2022 budget that we adopted assumed that we would, if you look at that, the bottom line, that we would end the year with $13.4 million in fund balance. Where now, just seeing where we are with revenues mostly, I believe, Jackie let me know that she thinks we're a couple $100,000 better off. And when that happens in the revenues, especially certain revenues, it carries through the forecast for the rest of the years. So the ending fund balance, the net results, as we call them, are stronger in each of the years of this forecast than they were when we brought it to you for the budget. So we do have, I think, the resource for this position. Finally, another indicator of affordability is, we need to keep our eye on our staffing costs, our staffing budget. Council has been very gracious with making sure that we're keeping up pay-wise, that we've been able to restore some positions, add a few things. I wanted to check to make sure how we doing with our personnel costs overall as a share of our total general fund budget. And Jackie ran those numbers, and for 2022, we're at 65% of our total budget is comprised of personnel. And that's in line, as you can see, with where we've been at least over the past 6 years, to show that we're keeping a pretty good check. We're only growing our staff as our work plan and our revenue base and our local economy grow. So that's what we look at to help us keep that all in check. So with that, I'd just like to ask your green light, if you'll grant it, on this new FTE that I think is affordable and that will help us to get all those projects that you looked at earlier done confidently and cost effectively.
Comments or questions for Jim on this item?
What do you want me to say? You just looked at me like you knew I was going to say something. I tentatively agree with this, kind of conditional on the fact that we are seeing projects being done. If there was nothing being done, we've got Mark working on the streets here. You can drive through the city and you can see everything that's been done in the last few years. And for me, that is the tentative green light for me that really shows that maybe we can, make that sacrifice and get, some more project managers going on. If it ever slacked off, then I guess I would be the first person to be showing up with torch and a pitchfork asking for some cuts to be made. So that's kind of where I stand on it. I'd like to see that we have savings. I'd like to see that we have more money going into projects, but if the projects can't be done because people are spread too thin, then the project won't be done. So it's kind of a catch-22.
Okay.
Well, we've all expressed concern about Jim, especially being overtaxed with too much, not being able to delegate more of the load out on the staff. So I'm thinking that maybe another position would help to spread that out, especially since this council seems to be wanting to do more work and more projects.
I am for this. I think that is a long list. I think we do need another person for that in order to be effective. But I also agree that if we can have maybe progress reports periodically just to see where we're at and to ensure that, we're utilizing this new person effectively would be great. I think especially if we want to continue with our projects and ensure that someone's keeping an eye on them, ensuring that their deadlines are being met, we definitely need another set of eyes on them. So I'm for it.
Sammy, got anything to add?
My only thought was what Councilmember Spears said about if we get enough things done, which I know, but would we have enough to keep both positions fully busy every year? Because on the one slide you had where you had split it between the two, on the one on the left, a lot of that stuff said 2022, or it looked like something that, and granted, I don't know all of this, but it looked like stuff that could maybe be done in a year or so. So that would be my one thing that maybe we could look at too, is if they do, for example, get done with their list, do we have something else for them to do? That was it.
If I can answer that, several of those projects that we think, if we find the right person, they're things like the police building, like the wastewater treatment, expansion that will take several years. And I think looking ahead at the capital plans that we have and things, this is going to be an important resource as we go forward for several years. And of course, we flex our staffing all the time. And we have, if we ever have to, when we have to reduce, we have some hard priorities, and that's one of the big criteria that we'd use.
Mark?
I think I've already expressed my opinions on when we spoke earlier, but I'm in favor of it. I just want to make sure that we are utilizing our budget, and conserving our, our residents, our citizens' tax dollars. But I also want to make sure our projects gets done. I also want to make sure that we're not, funding this position by cutting or reducing other positions that might be critically needed. But if we can make this work, I know we're going to have a lot of projects in the pipeline, not just what's on that list, but as we continue to grow, we'll add to that. But I just want to make sure we're utilizing our tax dollars wisely.
I'm for it as well, but I'm going to piggyback on Laura. I'm tentatively for it. Till I saw that graph, I wouldn't even say I was tentatively for it. I just want to make sure we've given out a lot of money for staff this year, rightfully so. The staff's earned it and they've deserved it. But we need to make sure that every time we get a little windfall of a couple extra 100,000, it's just, more staff, more staff. I think sometimes we're going to have to invest that money into other things too. I am for it at this point, though. I'm okay with it.
One other thing I would point out, Brian, that apparently in the past, either we had some staff that wasn't doing their job.
Right.
And I'm referring specifically to Tuscany, the problems we've had with Tuscany. So I don't know whether back then it was staff wasn't doing the job or they didn't have staff.
Sure. Yeah.
We'll oversee that.
So I'm in favor of it too. Anyone else? All right, let's get ready